Welcome back student, and this video lecture we will discuss about the anterior pituitary. As in the previous video lecture we have already discussed about the introduction to the pituitary gland, and the second video lecture we have discussed about the embryonic development of the pituitary glands, that how embryologically the development of pituitary glands occurs. As you can see in the diagrams of the pituitary glands. Now pituitary gland, it is mainly composed of two lobes. One is called as the posterior lobe, as you can see in the structures, while the second one that is called as the anterior lobes. In this video lecture we will mainly discuss the anterior pituitary lobe of the pituitary glands. Now this anterior pituitary gland, it is called as the master gland of the endocrine systems. Now why the anterior pituitary are regarded as the master gland of the endocrine systems? Because it regulates the functions of the other endocrine glands through its hormones. So that's why they are called as the master endocrine glands. Although there are some endocrine glands whose secretion is not under the influence of anterior pituitary, such as the pancreas, pineal gland, and thymus gland. So these are some of the endocrine glands whose secretion are not under the control of the anterior pituitaries. Now let's come to the part of the anterior pituitary. Now anterior pituitary, it is mainly composed of three parts. The first one that is pars tubularis, second one that is pars distalis, and the last one that is pars intermedia. As you can see here in the diagram, so this anterior pituitary, it is mainly composed of these three parts. The first one that is the pars tubularis. So this is a sheet-like parts of the anterior pituitary which mainly surround the stalk of the pituitary glands. The second one that is the pars distalis. It is one of the largest part of the anterior pituitary, and here most of the hormone productions are occurs, and you can say that the pars distalis, it is the main body of the anterior pituitary. And the third one that is pars intermedia. It is a thin layers that separate the anterior pituitary from the posterior pituitary. In case of the human, there is no concept of the intermediate lobes, as intermediate lobe, it is rudimentary in case of the humans. So mainly there are these three parts, they are included in the anterior pituitary. Now let's come to the histology of the anterior pituitary. Now if we zoom this anterior pituitary, here we can see the some type of the cell they are found inside the anterior pituitary, and these cells are classified into two types on the basis of their staining ability. The first one that is chromophore cells, and the second one that is chromophile cells. Chromophore cell, as the name indicates, chromo means colors, phobe means fear. So these are the cells that don't have any type of the granules, and they don't take any type of the stain. So such type of the cells, they are called as chromophore cells, and these chromophore cells are considered as the precursor of the chromophile cells. Now let's come to the second type of the cell that is found inside the anterior pituitary, and this is called as chromophile cells. As the name indicates, chromo means colors, phile means lover. So these are the cells that takes the stains. Such type of the cells are called as chromophile cells. Now further, these chromophile cells are classified into two further categories, and these classification on different bases. So the first classification of the chromophile cells, that is on the basis of the staining, that what type of the stain they are taken by the chromophile cells, either acidic or basic stain. And the second classification of the chromophile cell, that is basis on the secretory nature, that what type of the hormone they are secreted by these chromophile cells. Now we will see the classification of chromophile cell on the basis of the staining. So the first classifications of the chromophile cell, that is on the basis of the staining. Now, on the basis of the staining ability, chromophore cells are classified into two types of the cells. The first one that is called as acidophilic cells, and the second one that is called as basophilic cells. So acidophilic cells are the type of the chromophore cells that take the acidic stain. So such type of the chromophore cells are called as acidophilic cells, while the second type of the cells that is called as basophilic cells. Now these type of the chromophore cell that take the basic stain, so that's why they are called as basophilic cells. Now let's come to the second classifications of the chromophore cells, that is on the basis of secretory natures, that what type of the hormone these chromophore cells are secreted. Now on this basis we have five types of the chromophore cells. The first one that is somatotrophs, and these somatotrophs, these are basically the chromophore cells and responsible for the productions of the growth hormones. The second one that is corticotrophics, they are responsible for the productions of adrenocorticotropic hormones, which will act on the adrenal cortex and control its secretions. The third one that is thyrotrophs. These cells are responsible for the production of TSH, that we call as thyroid stimulating hormones, and this hormone, it is considered as one of the smallest hormone in the human body. It's mainly composed of 3 amino acids. Now the fourth chromophore cells, that is called as gonadotrophs. These gonadotroph cells are responsible for the productions of gonadal hormones, and these gonadal hormones are called as follicle stimulating hormones and luteinizing hormone, which will act on the gonads and control its secretions. Now the last type of the chromophore cells that we call as lactotrophs, as these chromophore cells are responsible for the production of prolactins. So these are the type of the cells that is found in the anterior pituitary. We will see here the hormones that are basically secreted from the anterior lobe of the pituitary glands. Now these are the descriptions of the hormone that are secreted by the anterior pituitary. Now the first hormone that is called as growth hormones, second one that is thyroid stimulating hormones, third one that is follicle stimulating hormones, and the fourth one that is the luteinizing hormones, the fifth one that is adrenocorticotropic hormone, and the last one that is prolactin hormones. So overall the anterior pituitary, it is responsible for the secretion of mainly 6 hormones. Now if we talk about the chemical nature of these 6 hormones, so these 3 hormones, that is TSH, FSH and LH, these are actually the glycoprotein in nature, while the remaining 3, that is growth hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH hormones and prolactin, so these 3, they are called as the protein or peptides in natures. Now the anterior pituitary, it is responsible for the secretion of glycoprotein hormones and also protein and peptide nature hormones. Now overall the anterior pituitary, it is divided into 2 categories. So the first type of the hormone that are secreted by the anterior pituitary, that we call as the trophic hormones, and the second one that is the non-trophic hormones. Now what is the trophic hormone that are secreted by the anterior pituitary? So the first one, that is the trophic. Now the trophic term means turn-ons. Now when these hormones that are secreted from the anterior pituitary, it will act on the other endocrine glands and stimulate its secretions. So such type of the hormones, that is called as the trophic hormones. Now the trophic hormones that are mainly secreted by the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, these are the 5 hormones The first one, that is adrenocorticotropic hormones, thyroid stimulating hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and the last one, that is the growth hormones. Now the question is about the growth hormones, how the growth hormone are considered under the trophic categories. As the growth hormone, it will act on every cells of the body and responsible for the growth of the body. Now this growth hormone, it is indirectly considered under the trophic category. When this growth hormone, it is secreted from the anterior lobe of the pituitary glands, so it will act on the levers. Now when this growth hormone, it will act on liver, so from the liver it will stimulate a hormone, or it will secrete a hormone from the liver that we call an stomatomadan hormone. Now when this hormone, it is secreted from the liver, it will stimulate the growth of the muscle, body, and other parts. So that's why this growth hormone, it is placed under the category of trophic hormone. Now the second category of the anterior pituitary hormone, that we call as non-trophic hormones. So these hormones, they are when secreted from the anterior lobe, it will directly act on the other gland and stimulate its secretions. Example, that is prolactin. So when prolactin, it will secrete it from the anterior lobe, it will act on the mammary glands and responsible for the secretion of milk from the mammary glands. So this hormone, it will directly act on the other glands. Now we will discuss the trophic hormone, that is what type of the growth hormones: ACTH, thyroid stimulating hormone, follicle, and luteinizing hormone, and what type of the functions they are performed by these glands in our body. So the first trophic hormone, that is called as growth hormones. Now the growth hormone, it is mainly secreted by the chromophene cells that we call as somatotrophs. Now these somatotrophs, they are responsible for the secretions of the growth hormone. Now let's come to the chemical nature of the growth hormone. Now this growth hormone, it is mainly composed of a single polypeptide chains, and this polypeptide chain, it will contain 191 amino acids. Now when this growth hormone, it is secreted by the somatotroph cells of the anterior pituitary, and this growth hormone, when it is come to the blood circulations, in the blood circulation, these hormones are transported to the target cells by specific protein that we call as growth hormone binding proteins. Now through these binding proteins, the growth hormone are transported to the target cells. Now what's the functions of the growth hormones? Now growth hormone, mainly it will increase the protein synthesis, DNA and RNA in the cells of the body. When the RNA and DNA concentration are increased, so here's the protein synthesis, it is increases. Overall the growth of the body occurs. The second function, that is decrease the rate of carbohydrate utilization in the cells. Now the carbohydrate that is found in the cells, so their utilization for the energy purpose, they are decreases. So overall the growth hormone are responsible for the growth of the body. Now when the deficiency of the growth hormone occurs, so various type of the disorder are occurs, such as when the hyper secretion of the growth hormone occurs, it will cause as gigantism and acromegaly. So gigantism, when the hyper secretion, it will occur in the children, it will cause gigantisms. Now when this hyper secretion of the growth hormone, it will occurs in the adults, it will cause a conditions or disorders that we call as acromegaly. Now when the hyper secretion or the deficiency of the growth hormone occurs in the children, it will cause a disorder that is called as dwarfism. Now these disorder that we will discuss in the following video lecture in details. The second trophic hormone that are basically secreted by the anterior pituitary, that we call as thyroid stimulating hormones. Now these hormones are basically secreted by a chromophene cells that is called as thyrotrophs, and these are actually the glycoprotein in nature. So what is the function of TSH. As the name indicates, these are the hormone that basically stimulate the thyroid gland and control its secretions. So overall, the functions of the TSH, that is, are necessary for the growth and secretory activity of the thyroid glands. Now the thyroid gland, it is one of the largest endocrine glands in our body. Now this thyroid gland, it will secrete T3 and T4 hormone. Now the secretion of these T3 and T4 hormones from the thyroid gland, it is under the influence of thyroid stimulating hormones. Third trophic hormone, that is called as the follicle stimulating hormones. These hormones are basically secreted by the gonadotrophic cells, and chemically these are also the glycoproteins in nature and mainly composed of two subunits. The first one, that is alpha subunit, and the second one, that is the beta subunit. Alpha subunit, it mainly composed of 92 amino acids, while the beta subunit, it is composed of 118 amino acids. Now what is the functions of follicle stimulating hormones in females in case of the male? Now look at the functions of the follicle stimulating hormones in case of the female. So when this follicle stimulating hormone, it is secreted from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, it will act on the ovary. Ovary is basically the primary sex organ of the females. Now as you can see here, inside the ovaries, there are fluid filled sacs are present that we call as the follicles. Now these are the follicle which is present in different developmental stages. Now when this follicle stimulating hormone, it will act on the ovary, it will cause the development of the growing follicle, which is called as the mature follicles. Now in this mature follicle, it will formed by the follicle stimulating hormones. Now this growing follicle, it will contain the cells that we call as theca interna cells. Now this theca interna cell, it is basically responsible for the secretion of female sex hormone that is called as estrogens. So this is the functions of the follicle stimulating hormone in case of the female. Now what is the function of follicle stimulating hormone in case of the male? Now when this follicle stimulating hormone, it is secreted from the anterior lobe, it will, in case of the male, it will act on the testes. Now inside the testes, some nerve cells are present that we call as Sertoli cells. When this FSH, when it will act on these nerve cells that we call as Sertoli cell, it will accelerate the process of spermatogenesis, mean the production of sperm, it will increases through the actions of follicle stimulating hormones. Another trophic hormones of the anterior pituitary, that is called as luteinizing hormones. These hormones are basically secreted by the gonadotroph cells of the anterior pituitary, and chemically these are glycoprotein in nature and mainly composed of two units, alpha subunit and beta subunits. As the alpha subunit, it is composed of 92 amino acids, while the beta subunit, it will contain 141 amino acids. Now what is the functions of luteinizing hormone in case of the female and case of male? Now here you can see this is the anterior pituitary. Now this anterior pituitary, it will contain the gonadotroph cells. These gonadotroph cell, it will secrete the luteinizing hormones. Now when this hormone, it is secreted from the gonadotroph cells of the anterior pituitary, it will act on the ovary in case of the females. Now when this luteinizing hormone, it will act on the ovaries, it will responsible for the formations of ovulation, or it will cause ovulations. Against this luteinizing hormone, it will responsible for the conversion of Graafian follicle into a yellow glandular structure that is called as corpus luteum, which will later on responsible for the secretion of female sex hormone that is called as progesterones. So this is the function of luteinizing hormone in the female body. Now in this luteinizing hormone, in case of the male, it will act on the testes. Now the testes, some cells are present that is located between the seminiferous tubule that we call as, these are the seminiferous tubules where the process of spermatogenesis occurs. This is another seminiferous tubule. So here some cells are present that we call as interstitial cells, are known as Leydig cells. Now when this Leydig cell it is stimulated by the luteinizing hormone, it will cause the secretion of testosterone. So that's why this luteinizing hormone it is also called as interstitial cell stimulating hormone because of their action on the interstitial cells. So this is the luteinizing hormone. Last trophic hormone that is called as adrenocorticotropic hormones. This hormone is basically secreted by the corticotrophic cells of the anterior pituitary. Now when this adrenocorticotropic hormone it is secreted from the anterior pituitary, it will act on the gland that is located on the top of the kidney, that is called as adrenal glands. Now this adrenal gland it is composed of two regions. The outermost region of the adrenal gland that is called as adrenal cortex, while the inner one that is called as adrenal medulla. Now this adrenocorticotropic hormone it will act on the adrenal cortex, and this adrenocorticotropic hormone it is responsible for the growth of adrenal cortex and its hormones such as the glucocorticoid, mineralocorticoid, and androgen sex hormone that are secreted from the adrenal cortex. Now the second hormone that are secreted from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland that is called as non-trophic hormones. So non-trophic hormones are the hormones that directly act on the target cells or tissue instead of stimulating other endocrine gland to release its hormones. So such type of the hormones that are called as the non-trophic hormones, and the non-trophic hormone that are basically secreted by the anterior pituitary, that is the prolactins. These prolactin are secreted by the lactotrophic cells, and it mainly composed of single polypeptide chain containing 199 amino acids. And this prolactin it is responsible for the preparations of mammary gland for the secretion and production of milks. So this is overall about the anterior pituitary gland. Thank you so much.